Hey everyone, it's Will, Gamer Dad, with another video for you. So first off, I'd like to give a shout out to one of my YouTube members, Tinky. Thanks for your support. Now in today's video, we're going to go over A.S. Hardy as a 5-star, and I'll do a little gameplay and let you know what I think about him. But the most important question of all is he hot or not?
Yeah, he's hot, especially with his powerful cannon.
I think you mean his Eclipse cannon, right? Alright, so as a Flash Strike Zone setter, he does have a VC, although most people won't be using that very often. Hammer and Fist equip character damage up 35 and wind resistance 50% for one turn. Still has some use. Now note his special abilities. He does start with 2 heat bullets. He also deploys Flash Strike, and he does have that transfer buff and debuff when he switches out. And since he gives himself quite a few buffs, you can actually use that to some great extent, although I did not demonstrate that in this video. Now, in terms of the 3 moves, you can actually use a lot of his 4-star moves, which is the Heart Attack, Physical Resist down, and note that they interact with fire stance just like before with his normal style Hardy. In this case, again, in Fire Zone, increase the debuff effect of that resistance as well. And finally, Flare Fist, which is actually not bad, increases wind type resistance of all party members, is stackable, and I will demonstrate that a little bit later on. Note that this one does stack the heat bullets on the user, which is the mechanic in both normal style as well as AS versions. You need to stack a maximum of 6 heat bullets, and then your moves become very, very powerful. And so his 5-star AS spammable move is the the first one is the Assault Gray. This is the preemptive setup move, which does blunt AoE, blunt resistance down, crit damage up for himself. Note that in Flash Strike, which is what he starts with, you get double the effect. So crit damage up 60% for him, blunt resistance down 60% to all the enemies. Now note that the blood resistance down is not 100% guaranteed, so sometimes you'll get it, sometimes you won't, and so there is a little bit of RNG in that sense. Now the Desperado, like I said earlier, is the spam move. This one stacks the heat bullets and is a more powerful version of the 4-star move that has wind resistance. This one does extra hits depending on the number of heat bullets, and so if you can stack 6 bullets, which is very easy during Flash Strike, you're going to have a 7-hit combo, and because you're doing this in an AF as well, you're going to get increased strength of this move depending on the number of force combo meter percentage. Very, very useful and can combine with other powerful units such as ES Molina, Combo Rate Grasta, so on and so forth. Finally, there is a move that isn't announced here, and I will show you that, which is called the Eclipse Cannon. It is not listed, however, it's kind of like AS Tsubame, where you can use that move, and it replaces his regular attack, and it does extreme damage, which is in the description as I show you through the video. And there's the 5-star board. I would like, actually, for that description of the move to be somewhere found in his kit. However, I guess they just don't do that, and it describes it as you're in the battle. Now, in terms of his Grasta setup, pretty standard stuff. MP consumption, bullseye, and enemy numbers. Don't forget that you can also equip normal style Hardy's Grasta in order to enhance at least the stats, but not the VC of AS Hardy. So, let's take him out for a spin. If you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe to my channel, I really appreciate it. I also do have a Patreon account for those who want to support me this way. So first off, even if you get him right away without Grasta or anything, he is an awesome farmer. Note that this Eclipse Cannon removes Zone, which is a Flash Strike. It charges the bar. It also does extra damage based on the number of heat bullets. You can see how much boost right there. It's almost like it's a double boost where it hits and then boosts again. And so you get a huge, quick boost again if you are farming 0 MP cost, mind you. And you say it breaks Zone, which is kind of bad. Keep in mind that in Flash Strike Zone, you only get it for 1 turn anyways. And so as a farming move, if you speed him up where he acts first, very, very useful. Now, in terms of his other attacks, you can clearly see that it does a tremendous amount of damage. They are fire-based damage, and so remember that in Flash Strike Zone, all damage is increased by 30% anyways. Now, I know a lot of you will be asking, what's the difference between Melissa and AS Hardy? Now, in my limited experience with AS Hardy and moderate experience with Melissa, the Flash Strike is both for continuing to set up buffs and debuffs for your team, and so that part is the same. However, AS Hardy has a lot more DPS capabilities. His one-shot attack with the AS Eclipse Cannon is quite tremendous, and he can stack quite a few bullets, which can be used either during the AF or like an AF finisher, like a damager after the HP stopper. Whereas for Melissa, I mean, she supports the whole team more. She can give speed, crit damage up, type down, and so on and so forth. Physical resistance down. AS Hardy is more of a selfish unit, kind of gives himself all the DPS and all the buffs and debuffs, and so you can power everything into him like other frontline DPS. Alright, so back to the action here. So in this example, we're going to show his spammable 4-star move, which is basically the one that stacks wind resist debuffs, which is a Flare Fist. Now, normally you wouldn't be using this. Obviously, Desperado is quite a bit better. However, against strong wind enemies such as the True Manifested Suzette, you first of all get to set up all your buffs and debuffs with using Flash Strike stance and AS Hardy. You're playing... I mean, you can do plenty of damage. Note that we have top line DPS anyways. We have ASU in here. We obviously have ES Melina as our kind of type buff. And also during Lunatic, it also boosts your speed and power. And we do have AS Tsubame applying that dual debuff 35-35. The clones of Suzette's are cleared. And you can see that with enough shielding, we did take only a small amount of damage. Now note that now she boosts herself with that power and int, and so the second time around we're going to do a bit more damage. However, the point of this is not necessarily to survive with all our units, but just to kind of showcase some of the abilities that AS Hardy has. Alright, so we're just going to remember that he interacts not only with his own Flash Strike stance, he can also interact with Fire Zone, and although his AS version doesn't VC in a zone, you can still use Fire Zone Grasso, which can be obtained through the Battle Simulator or Boss Rush Stage 7, which is the Trial to Light the Darkness. It's an older Boss Rush stage, so at this point, hopefully you have the roster to be able to beat it. Certainly much easier than some of the newer Boss Rush stages. Alright. So in this case, Tsubame is not our DPS, mainly our dual debuffer, and it kind of shows one of the strengths of having a Flash Strike Zone. You can kind of mix elements, you can mix weapon types, although in this case we're using all blunt. However, you can actually, and I'll show you later on, you can actually mix magic users with physical users. You can mix, like, for example, sword users with lance users. You don't have to stick to a specific weapon type. All of them will charge the AF equally, which I believe is 10%. And so your bar is maintained on the first turn quite long, such that anything you want to do is able to be stacked. Like, you can keep on stacking over and over again, so you can get all your, like I said, buffs and debuffs. So if you don't end the fight right away, whereas they have no HP stoppers, you can just win. In the case of HP stoppers, you usually stacked up enough buffs and debuffs so that the rest of your DPS can clear each HP stopper without too much harm. Now, in this case, we're going to take on the True Spirit, and note that if you do have a Flash Strike Setter up front, aka one of the two we will have, when the enemy starts with Zone, your Flash Strike will replace it, and so you get the benefit of still having that Flash Strike stance, and we are using the same team here, and so yeah, we get that, and it can help our team continue to power our AF. Look at how many hits and rounds we're getting in. So remember that in this example, we don't have to protect ourselves against wind attacks. We are using the Desperado moves to stack. Note that I did not use the Eclipse Cannon, which is kind of the one-shot kill. The Desperado is the one that stacks the heat bullets, mind you, and the Eclipse Cannon is activated not only in Flash Strike stance, but in any stance. And so the most comfortable stance for him, other than that, would obviously be Fire's stance, because his attacks are fire, and so in Fire Zone, he can now use the Eclipse Cannon. Keep in mind that the Eclipse Cannon does, like I said earlier, replace the regular moves, and in our first example, we actually got to see that we can select Fist Slam, and when zones reactivated, it automatically defaults to Eclipse Cannon. So you can actually set the Fist Zone and Fist Slam, and as long as you have zone activating either through VC or through moves, then that Eclipse Cannon will come out with a vengeance. Alright, So again, in this case, Tsubame is still our dual debuffer. Yuan, so like I said, same team, same strategy. It's just that we're showing his damage in a fire zone as opposed to in flash strike, and you can clearly see that after flash strike is over, he still has a lot of capability. He has stored up all those heat bullets, which can be blown away with the Eclipse Cannon. If you want, you can continue just spamming the Desperado, which is by no means a weak move. It has a high multiplier anyways, and you can actually reserve that Eclipse Cannon for when you need it. But most of the time, if you only have 1 HP stopper, that Eclipse Cannon will do hundreds of millions of damage, especially against enemies weak to fire or blunt. Alright. So, again, another common question will be like, which one would you recommend? Which one would you prefer? AS Hardy or Melissa? And I will argue that they do two different things. So, if you really need a very powerful fire unit that can still support your team through Flash Strike Zone, I still think he is quite good in that role specifically. In the case of if you need almost an all-around unit to really be plugged in to really power your entire team, whatever zone, whatever element and stuff like that, I think the Melissa actually helps with synergy a lot more, being the fact that, like I said, she applies physical resist, gives crit damage up, and so on and so forth. Don't forget, she can also apply break if you need it with Ruin Genocide, and that helps increase damage. In this case, we don't need break to be applied by Melissa. We have Pizzica here. And so now we can really see the one-shot kill with the Eclipse Cannon. Alright. Now, I will say, I'm surprised it's not 2 ends for cannon, but, you know, whatever. it could just be that I can't fit. 1 blast, 245 million, absolutely no problem. I remember, again, some of these fights earlier on were much tougher, and of course with newer units you really don't have a single issue clearing them. Like, I shouldn't have to use Pizzica and AS Hardy, for example, to beat this boss. However, this is all a showcase about the potential for AS Hardy. Bear in mind that I've only had them for a day, and although I'm familiar with the mechanics of these units as I researched them through various sources, I wouldn't say I'm an expert of using them, although I can see how useful he will be, especially, don't forget that ES Suzette is coming out, as has come out in Japan. She's a blunt zone setter, and she really helps fire type blunt. Guess who is a fire type blunt? That's right. AS Hardy is going to pair very, very well with ES Suzette, and so once I get my waifu in her hammer form, I'm looking forward to slaying all the enemies around us. Alright, so again, another example of the power of Flash Strike stance, and AS Hardy is our DPS as well as Flash Strike stance, as opposed to a Melissa where your team comp will be a little bit different. Instead of relying on him, like, we have the Flash Strike stance setter plus fire DPS. In the case of Melissa, you would choose, in this case, 1 fire DPS, 1 water DPS, and potentially 1 support. In this case, we can really use 2 supports, aka ES Melina as well as Pizzica, and then we have our newest unit, of course, Eva, just blasting the Akadenshu literally out of the water. I mean, you've already seen how powerful she is. I don't really have to tell you much about it, but yeah, during the AF, you know, she is able to be mixed. Look at all the different types there. You got a Pierce, you got a Magic, you got a Fist, and then, like I said, you blast with your Flash Strike so that AF bar is maintained. And when the time is right and you've already killed it anyways, you can use Eclipse Cannon and kill off any remaining HP on any enemies who are weak to fire or blunt. Note that this particular dual Hachio fight has no HP stopper, and so very, very straightforward if you have the right Grasta and frontline units. I would say that even Eva wouldn't be necessary. I would say other powerful water DPS should be adequate for that, especially given that Pizzica has that ability to cast Rhapsody Aria, which, remember, doubles the damage while singing, and at the end of the turn before the next hit, you're going to have that break status as well. Alright, I do have, of course, 5-star reviews of each of those units. You can check those out if you are relatively new to the game or you haven't watched it yet. Those playlists hopefully will help you kind of analyze some of the units and maybe fit them on your team as well. And our 4 Grasta slot Straw Boy is there to carry a bunch of Grasta for everybody. And in our last example, one more dual Hatchio fight, and this one does have an HP stopper, so our team makeup is slightly different. Our main DPS is not going to be magic now, it's going to be physical. And the reason why is, don't forget that when you're building a team, whether or not it's a 1-turn setup, 2-turn setup, or just an elemental or zone team, you want some synergy. Keep in mind that one of the strengths of Pizzica not only is the fact that she can do the Rhapsody, Aria, shielding, blah 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 blah, she does increase crit damage for physical units as well as pierce damage for physical units that are pierce units by up to 60%. And so in this case, his Mina will benefit much more from the boosts and buffs from Pizzica rather than a pure magic unit like Eva. Not to say she's bad, of course, just you have to use different team costs depending on what you're up against. Okay, and so again, understanding the different mechanics on how the different units work really matter, because what we want to do is we want our fastest unit to heal. We're going to use Hardy, which is we've already stacked on certain grass dust such that he is not a little bit faster, but not quite as fast as AS His Mina. And we also have to play around with AS His Mina stacks, because one of her moves, which is the Rosa Espina, if you use it too many times, she boosts her own power and speed, which can allow her to act first or faster, and you don't want that. You want her to act last because you want to re-establish the Pierce zone and then one-shot kill with Rosa Espina. So a little bit of tinkering, and if you use the Grasta, which does apply secondary stats of speed or power or whatever, and you can also, of course, use badges, which are speed and power to your liking, such that you can customize your team so that certain things rotate in and out. Certain units are faster than others, so they can act first, allowing your main DPS to act last. That's generally the idea. Get your main DPS to act last, and benefit from all the other things that happen in the turn, in the turn previous to that. All right, and again, Strawboy just sitting there. Okay, so in conclusion, AS Hardy is our second Flash Strike stance setter. Very, very useful, very, very powerful, and like Gamer Mom said, his Eclipse cannon is extremely powerful. Not only that, he's 11 out of 10 on the coolness factor. I mean, he's like James Bond. Look at him, just leaving explosions, emptying clips of bullets. Awesome. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.